So CCH's main platform is called IntelliConnect, and that's something that in the future might change the name. They're talking about with Westlaw and Checkpoint, they have what's called Edge, which is kind of like their artificial intelligence version. So in the future, IntelliConnect might not be their name. So at the time of this video, that's what it's referred to as CCH IntelliConnect. And just like Checkpoint, Bloomberg, BNA, Westlaw, Lexis, this is a secondary source putting together all tax information. We've got editorial information, primary sources, right? So primary and secondary sources. It's a service offered by Walter Kluwer, and versus Checkpoint is Thomson Reuters. So we've seen this already. We've talked about the 4 primary ways to research, right? We've got keyword searches, content search, index search, citation search. And in CCH, that's how it's broken down as well. At the top, you're going to have the keyword search. We can select your different sources. You're going to have an area for citation search. It's going to be pretty easy to navigate to find that. You're going to have indexes. You're going to have table of contents as well. So the databases that CCH offers, you've got your annotated tax services, which remember annotated tax services, just like in Checkpoint, they're organized by Internal Revenue Code section number. They call them compilations as they compile an editor's explanation evaluation. They provide annotations, brief summaries of related court cases and administrative rulings. Also, topical tax services. So these are organized by transactions and related subject matters. So we're talking about topics. So index type search where you're looking at topics, kind of like, think of like an encyclopedia, right? You've got tax issues related to adoption, alimony, things with A, right? You're going in the A section of the topics of tax. What are some other ones? Amortization. So it's broken down by specific topics. And again, so once you go through one database, it's very similar to structure. The differences are the terms and phrases of what they use. So the CCH IntelliConnect opening screen is organized to facilitate quick access, just like we saw in Checkpoint. You go in, and it pretty much lays everything out on the first page. So here you see CCH IntelliConnect's home screen, and this is what, when you go into CCH, what you have. Now, one good thing about CCH, and you can do this on Checkpoint, just not with an online subscription to if you're at an educational institution. With CCH, you're actually able to save your search. But when Checkpoint, when you have your own account, you can actually do that as well. Okay? So notice that it's broken down very similar to Checkpoint. We've got Citator. We have, and this is the main screen. It's got your favorites over here on the left. All content. So actually, if you're trying to get into primary and secondary sources, it's actually broken down here. Right? You got federal tax, state tax, and you can select these items. Obviously, you'd want to drill down. So let's say you have a federal tax issue. You want to drill down there. And you go through that to find the primary materials and secondary materials that CCH offers. You then can search in the search box, navigation bar they call it at the top, for whatever it is. Now this is probably something you've already seen when you've looked at other databases. You've got the primary source materials, right? We've got the Internal Revenue Code. We've got an archive tax code, so you can look at old previous tax codes. We have federal tax regulations, cases, and they're going to be tax cases when you're looking at CCH. IRS administrative rulings, letters and letter rulings and IRS positions. You've also got other IRS publications, Circular 230 Constitution, and topical indexes. Now, what's unique to CCH over other databases, you've got CCH's specific editorial materials. Now, different people have different preferences. You got the federal tax coordinator. You've got tax research consultant, which is CCH's flagship editorial content. So that is the counterpart to Checkpoint's federal tax coordinator. That's the flagship. Okay. So one thing, if you learn one database, let's say you learn Checkpoint. Again, if you're going into CCH, it's going to be very similar in terms of the format. Not identical in terms of the format, very similar. The things to understand is, hey, if I'm looking for the flagship, where CCH invests most of their money, just like Checkpoint invests most of their money in federal tax coordinator, what is that? Is that the tax research consultant? The standard federal tax reporter? Is it the master tax guide? What is it? It is the tax research consultant. And if you're taking a tax research course, that's usually where the tax faculty member will test you on, like, what's the differences between, Checkpoint and CCH. It's usually these editorial materials. So again, tax research consultant is the main editorial, flagship editorial content. The standard federal tax reporter, this organizes both editorial authority by code section, and the primary authority in each code section is ordered by the items as well. So here we have federal tax editorial content. And notice you can select either the U.S. Master Tax Guide here or the Tax Research Consultant. So the Tax Research Consultant, again, is the flagship, and it's going to be broken down here based on topical items, or it can also be based on code sections as well. But here, topical organization. So here's the standard federal tax reporter annotated organization. And by the way, I mentioned earlier the tax research consultant, topical, and I said also broken down by code section. It's actually listed by topic, but within the topics you can get to code sections. That's what I was referring to. My apologies. So this is the standard federal tax reporter annotated organization. You can actually get this down broken by code section, which it is. You see here, it's broken by specific code sections. You've got income, section 61 through 90. We're looking at alimony, right? We got an alimony issue, section 71. Got child services, section 73. Annuity, section 72. And they're showing you here an example where they're looking at the standard federal tax reporter annotated organization, where you have different paragraphs covering these different topics, like liability of parent, deductions of minors, whatever it is. So like all databases, all tax databases, the major ones, Westlaw, Lexis, Checkpoint, CCH, Bloomberg, there's the four main ways to search: keyword, contents, index, citation. We saw on the main page where you can access all of those, right? The one main thing about CCH is that almost all your stuff is done in that left-hand column area where you find your favorites. Everything kind of drilled down. So a lot of people don't really find that format the best. They kind of like Checkpoint, where everything is broken on the overall web page, and you kind of like drill down, which is similar to what they have in Westlaw. It's similar to that as well. Makes sense because they're both kind of connected to one another through a parent corporation. So keyword search, we've all done keyword searches before. We use Google. We use all these search engines. So here's an example of a keyword search in CCH. You go to search, browse, selected content. You select the items. So you could search all content here if you wanted, or if you select selected content, then it's going to be, whatever you click. So if you want also to select the Federal Tax Archives, you just check that as well. And then notice that the phrase that's being searched here is, what is the tax treatment of a child's income? Now, tax research databases are becoming more and more AI-based, where if you put in a term or phrase, it tries to give you a better phrase that it thinks would be more beneficial to your search query. That'll happen more and more likely, and that's just something that go into CCH, go into Checkpoint and try that. This happens a lot of time with Google too. You start typing something and it automatically types it for you, what you're thinking based on what people are searching or what's popular right now. Same thing in tax. So this is the search results that come up if you search from the previous slide, and here we have it broken down by explanations, laws, and you can also search within these criteria. You can select content and search them for certain things, and it can bring up various items. This is just showing you a breakdown of different items from that previous search, showing you two compare-contrast situations. So up here we have the Tax Research Consultant, which again is the flagship of CCH. And then here we actually have the code section. So we've gone through our secondary sources, and that's located us to section 73. So we found it that way. So this would be an example of using index or topical searches to locate a code section that's relevant to our issue. So once you go to a code section, just like in Checkpoint, you're able to select the boxes, like the regulations, that relate specifically to the code section. So within each code section, you'll have regulations, cases, all these different boxes that apply with respect to that code section. So you can kind of use section 73 to say, hey, I need to find some regulations on this, and it shows you all regulations that are relevant. Now here's something interesting. And here's another difference when you're looking at different types of databases. So one major difference in databases are the names of their respective flagship editorial content or very different editorial items. Another is the Boolean connectors. They're not identical in the different databases. So when I was in law school, for example, there was this fight over people using Westlaw versus Lexis, and this was probably one of the biggest things people talked about, is how Westlaw had different Boolean connectors and how they meant different things than Lexis. It's a similar thing between CCH and Checkpoint. If you actually go through, you'll see that a lot of them are the same, but not identical to what you find in Checkpoint. So using an index search, so we've got the Tax Research Consultant Topical Index, right? We were looking at previous Annotated or whatnot, which can be broken down by index as well, topical. So if you're interested in finding, again, something like adoption, that was one of our A's that we used earlier, you could go see adoption of children. And then you go to adoption, then you go to respective item, and it takes you to the respective paragraph or area of the tax research consultant. So for example, various issues we have here, various paragraphs presented to us. So we continue with this index search, and they're looking for the child earned income. They searched all content, and they finally found this specific index, again in the tax research consultant by index. They got all the way to this paragraph. So it's just showing you, these different slides are showing you how you can get to the same editorial content by keyword search, by index search, and whatnot. So this is an example of a citation search. If you know, hey, section 73 deals with child's income of child services, you could go here, go to the code section and put in section 73, and that would lead you to section 73, and then you could from there go to the tax research consultant as one of those selections. So citators, we've seen this already in Checkpoint. Citators are important because you have to understand that the law evolves and changes, and if something has been overruled or superseded or the law has changed, you use citators because they give you the most up-to-date view of that law. That's the main thing. There's other things that I mentioned here with courts, revenue rulings. They talk about all these different things. So a citator provides just that. It says, okay, you have primary authority. Is that primary authority still relevant based on today's law? When is the citator used? It must be used to determine how later legal developments have impacted all sources of the primary authority that are relevant to the client's tax issue. So this just goes through the difference between citing case, cited case, applying all the terms. Again, same description we've gone through with respect to Checkpoint in the previous discussions. So what type of information does Citator contain? It talks about all the direct history of the primary authority being validated. It also links you to those cases, indexes, it lists the citing authorities. It does not indicate when a case or ruling is invalid due to legislative revisions. That's one thing to note. So you have to keep track of that yourself. And one thing with the code section is the code actually tells you how, when it's been revised or changed. So that provides you a guide of that. Editors may choose to limit the list of citing the judicial cases to those having significant impact. Services may be annotated as to how a citing authority impacts cited authority. So here's what the CCH Citator looks like. Notice that it's found under Citator at the top, and you can also get to it by going through a case in CCH or a revenue ruling on the side, just like in Checkpoint. It's not under citations. So this is different. Citations is where you do your citation, your search when you know, hey, I have a code section to pull it up. Okay? When you have your authority, you know a code section, case, revenue ruling, I'm going to pull that up. So a citation search versus a citator is actually where you locate, you determine if primary authority has been, is up to date. So finally, this really concludes our CCH discussion. IntelliConnect uses 3 additional sources of tax info, tax treatises. So that's another reason why a lot of people prefer Checkpoint over CCH. That Checkpoint has the WG&L treatises, which are a staple in the tax profession. A lot of people rely on WG&L. WG&L and B&A portfolios, which are in Bloomberg. Those are the 2 ones you'll hear thrown around a lot. CCH does have some treatises, so don't discount it just for treatises. And there might be people out there that prefer the CCH treatises. There might be an author of a CCH treatise that someone finds more valuable than maybe, let's say, a B&A or WG&L treatise. There's also tax periodicals like Taxes, the Tax Magazine. And there's client tools, charts, calculators, and other forms. They're all, in all the databases, they have these, and CCH has them as well.